Welcome to the mystery. Welcome to the channel where we unravel the enigmas that history refuses to explain. Picture a place where the cold cuts like knives, where the ice seems to whisper, and the horizon is a blinding white that swallows everything in its path. Now imagine an entire group of explorers, 129 souls, vanishing without a trace in that frozen hell. This is the mystery of the lost Franklin expedition, one of the 19th century's most haunting tragedies. In 1845, Sir John Franklin, a seasoned British explorer, set sail with two ships, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, into the Canadian Arctic, chasing the fabled Northwest Passage, a route promised to link the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Armed with cutting-edge Victorian technology, 3 years' worth of supplies, and an elite crew, they seemed unstoppable. But the Arctic doesn't bow to human ambition. The ships disappeared, and with them every man aboard. No messages, no survivors, only fragments of a horror locked in ice. What happened to Franklin and his men? Were they crushed by the ice, consumed by hunger, or claimed by something darker in the vast white void? For over a century, rescue missions, Inuit stories, and modern discoveries have pieced together a chilling tale, yet the full truth remains buried. We've found shipwrecks, bodies preserved in permafrost, even signs of desperation so extreme they defy comprehension. The Inuit spoke of men walking on the ice, figures that seemed more shadow than human. Were they survivors, or something the Arctic refused to release? In this series, we'll journey into the heart of this mystery, from Britain's imperial dreams to the darkest theories still whispered in the Arctic winds. Prepare for a story that doesn't just recount a disappearance, but makes you feel the weight of the cold, the oppressive silence of the ice, and the question that lingers. What would you do, trapped in a place where nature itself seems alive and against you? If you're drawn to mysteries that defy logic and pull you to the edge of the abyss, subscribe and hit the bell to join us on this chilling voyage. Let's uncover what lies behind the silence of the lost Franklin expedition. Part 1. The Dream of the Northwest Passage. In the 19th century, Britain burned with the fever of exploration. London's halls echoed with tales of uncharted seas, and the Royal Navy, the world's mightiest, sought to claim the ultimate prize, the Northwest Passage. This fabled route through the Canadian Arctic promised a shortcut from the Atlantic to the Pacific, a path to riches and imperial glory. In 1845, Sir John Franklin, a grizzled explorer at 59, was chosen to lead the charge. His ships, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, were marvels of Victorian engineering, ironclad hulls, steam-driven propellers, built to conquer the ice. But the Arctic, with its endless white expanse and bone-chilling silence, cared little for human ambition. Franklin was no stranger to the Arctic's wrath. He had survived earlier expeditions, enduring starvation and storms that etched lines into his weathered face. His crew respected him, though some whispered his age made him stubborn. The Erebus and Terror, their names carrying an eerie foreboding, were stocked for 3 years. Tinned meat, soup and vegetables sealed with lead, sacks of flour, tea and lemons to fend off scurvy. The 129 men, officers, sailors, engineers, were the Navy's finest, handpicked for skill and courage. Yet the tins, laced with poison no one suspected, held a hidden threat. The Arctic would exploit every weakness. The Northwest Passage was more than a route, it was a trophy. Finding it would cement Britain's dominance over rivals like Russia and France. Maps of the time were vague, dotted with guesses about ice-choked channels and unknown lands. Earlier explorers like Parry and Ross had come close, but the passage remained a riddle, a frozen labyrinth promising wealth and fame. Franklin, backed by the Admiralty and a nation's pride, embraced the challenge with a mix of duty and hubris. At Greenhithe's docks, as gulls screeched and the wind carried the scent of salt, he bid farewell to his wife, Lady Jane, vowing to return triumphant. But there was a shadow in the air, a chill no map could capture. As sailors loaded crates, they swapped tales of lost expeditions, of ships crushed by ice until they screamed like living things. The Inuit, the Arctic's native people, knew these waters as a place of spirits, where the wind carried voices not quite human. Franklin, a man of science, dismissed such stories, but some of his men, staring at the grey horizon, felt a shiver. The Arctic wasn't just a destination, it was a foe, patient and merciless. As the Erebus and Terror sailed from England's shores, their white sails stark against a leaden sky, no one could foresee they were heading toward a silence that would swallow them whole. Part 2. Preparations and Departure. In the spring of 1845, the docks of Greenhithe, England, buzzed with purpose. The HMS Erebus and HMS Terror stood ready, their wooden hulls reinforced with iron and fitted with steam propellers, a testament to Victorian ingenuity. Sir John Franklin, his face lined from past Arctic trials, oversaw the loading of supplies for a mission to conquer the Northwest Passage. The ships carried enough provisions for 3 years, 8,000 tins of meat, soup and vegetables sealed with lead solder, sacks of flour, biscuits, sugar, tea and lemons to stave off scurvy. Tools, coal, and even 2,900 books filled the holds, meant to keep spirits high during long Arctic nights. But the lead in the tins, a silent poison, and clothing unfit for extreme cold hinted at flaws no one yet saw. The crew of 129 was the Navy's elite. Officers like James Fitzjames, young and charismatic, and Francis Crozier, captain of the Terror and an Arctic veteran, brought experience. Sailors, carpenters, cooks, and even a pet monkey completed the ranks, each man aware of the glory the passage promised. The Admiralty's pressure was immense. Britain's reputation as a global power rested on this success. Failure was unthinkable. London's newspapers hailed Franklin as a hero, while maps, half-guessed and riddled with blanks, fueled dreams of empire. Yet the rushed production of the tinned food, supplied by a questionable contractor, carried a hidden danger, lead leaching into every meal. Preparations weren't without unease. The ship's steam engines, adapted from railway locomotives, were untested against Arctic ice. The heavy wool coats, while warm, couldn't withstand the bone-deep cold of -40 degrees. Some sailors, hefting crates, whispered of past expeditions trapped in ice, their crews reduced to gaunt spectres. Franklin, steadfast in his belief in progress, brushed off such tales. His focus was on the mission: chart the passage, secure Britain's dominance. But the Arctic, vast and unforgiving, loomed in the minds of the crew as they packed the final barrels. On May 19, 1845, the expedition set sail. At Greenhithe, under a grey sky, families gathered to bid farewell. Lady Jane Franklin, her face tight with restrained tears, embraced her husband, whispering words of hope. Children waved handkerchiefs, and a band played as the Erebus and Terror glided down the Thames. The air smelled of salt and coal, the gulls' cries a mournful chorus. The ship's silhouettes faded into the mist, a final glimpse for those on shore. For many, it was a goodbye they didn't know was forever. The crew looked ahead, toward the Arctic, where ice and silence waited. As England vanished behind them, a quiet dread settled in. The Inuit, though far away, knew these waters as a realm of spirits, where winds carried strange voices. Franklin, a man of charts and compasses, paid no heed to such stories, but some sailors, gazing at the slate-grey sea, felt a weight in their chests. The Erebus and Terror sailed toward a place that defied navigation and survival itself. The Arctic, with its frozen jaws, stood ready to test not just their skill, but their will to endure. Part 3. The First Months. In the summer of 1845, HS Erebus and HMS Terror sailed into the Canadian Arctic, a realm of eternal ice and ghostly auroras. The sky shimmered with unearthly light, and icebergs loomed like silent giants. Sir John Franklin, standing on the Erebus's deck, led with the confidence of a man who'd faced the Arctic before. His 129 men, a mix of seasoned officers and eager sailors, filled journals and letters with early optimism, their words capturing a fragile hope. Yet the landscape, blinding white, pierced by winds that howled like distant cries, soon began to whisper warnings no one could ignore. The expedition advanced through Lancaster Sound, a known but treacherous passage. Bundled in wool coats, the crew laboured through endless shifts, hacking at ice with axes and saws. James Fitzjames, commander of the Erebus, wrote of the Arctic's terrifying beauty. Mountains of ice glowing under the midnight sun, and a cold that burned straight through the skin. Meals of tinned soup and salted meat kept spirits up, washed down with rum, but the ice thickened, forcing detours through uncharted channels. Maps, sketched from earlier voyages, faltered, and currents dragged the ships into a frozen maze. Trouble crept in quietly. The first signs of scurvy appeared, swollen gums, aching limbs, exhaustion that clung like a shadow. The lemons helped, but not enough. Some men, like young sailor John Torrington, wrote of restless nights, dreams of figures moving across the ice, lights flickering without source. The silence of the Arctic was crushing, broken only by the creak of the ship's hulls, a sound like a heartbeat slowing. The men sang, read, and staged plays to keep despair at bay, yet the vastness pressed on their minds, a constant reminder they were far from home. Encounters with the Inuit were fleeting and tense. From the fog, figures in furs appeared and vanished, their gazes unreadable. Franklin, under Admiralty orders, kept his distance, though the Inuit understood these waters better than any map. Their stories spoke of spirits in the glaciers, of winds carrying voices not human. At night, sailors heard sounds beyond the groaning ice, whispers, footsteps that ceased the moment they strained to listen. Fear rooted itself quietly in their hearts. Still, Franklin clung to discipline. He organized readings from the ship's libraries, officers recited Shakespeare, and plays lit up the icy decks. But the cold grew sharper, the sun barely rose, and shadows lengthened as if time itself had stalled. The men felt the weight of isolation, trapped in a world where even silence seemed alive. As Erebus and Terror pressed on, the ice closed tighter, patient and merciless. If you were aboard, watching the white walls rise around you, would you trust in hope, or sense that the Arctic had already begun to claim them? Part 4. Early Signs of Danger. By the fall of 1845, the Arctic began to bare its teeth to the men of HMS Erebus and HMS Terror. The landscape, once a marvel of glowing icebergs and dancing auroras, turned hostile. The ice closed in, creaking with a life of its own, as if the Arctic were breathing. Sir John Franklin, commanding from the Erebus, kept his resolve, but his journals hinted at growing unease. The 129 men, trapped in a world of blinding white and bone-chilling cold, felt the expedition's weight shift from ambition to survival. Small cracks in their resolve, ice blockages, dwindling supplies, whispers of fear, began to spread like fractures in the frozen sea around them. Progress slowed to a crawl. Lancaster Sound gave way to narrower channels where ice gripped the ships, halting them for days. The crew, shivering in wool coats, hacked at the ice with picks and saws under temperatures that froze their breath. The steam engines, a triumph of Victorian engineering, roared uselessly against the frozen mass. Supplies, though plentiful, showed troubling signs. Some tinned meat, poorly sealed, reeked of rot, and the lead solder, unbeknownst to them, leached poison into every bite. Scurvy crept in, bleeding gums, loose teeth, a weariness that sank into the bones. The lemons in tins offered little relief. James Fitzjames, in his Erebus journals, noted rising tensions. Exhaustion and cold sparked arguments over rations and shifts. Some men, like John Torrington, wrote of hallucinations, blurred figures on the ice, lights flickering in the snow with no source. The Arctic's cold, plunging to -40 degrees, attacked not just the body but the mind. Sailors swapped tales of past expeditions crushed by ice, their crews reduced to starving shadows. Franklin tried to maintain order with strict routines, inspections, readings, card games by lamplight, but the air in the ships grew heavy, as if the ice were pressing inward. Encounters with the Inuit remained scarce but unsettling. Through the fog, figures in furs watched from a distance, never approaching. One night, a sailor swore he saw a sled vanish into the mist, but dawn revealed no tracks. The Inuit, masters of this frozen world, knew secrets the English couldn't grasp. How to read the ice, how to survive the endless winter. Their stories, unheard by Franklin, spoke of spirits in the storms, of voices carried by the wind. The crew, dousing their lamps, heard noises beyond the hull's creak, whispers, footsteps that stopped when listened for. Fear began to coil, unspoken but ever present. The crew still trusted Franklin, but doubt took root. The Northwest Passage, which felt so close, seemed to slip further away with each day, trapped in the ice. The men stared at the white horizon, wondering if the Arctic would let them pass or claim them as it had others. The cold, the hunger, and the silence wove a net around them, tightening with every frozen breath. The expedition, still clinging to its mission, was sailing toward a fate no one could predict, in a land that seemed to watch their every move. Part 5. The Disappearance. In July 1845, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror were in Baffin Bay, on the edge of the Canadian Arctic. Two British whaling ships, the Prince of Wales and Enterprise, spotted them amid fog and icebergs. Brief salutes were exchanged, and Franklin's men, still buoyed by purpose, shared news of their progress. No one aboard those whalers could have guessed it was the final glimpse of the 129 men of the Franklin expedition. After that moment, the Arctic swallowed them whole. The ships vanished, and a silence fell, broken only by the ice's slow, deliberate creak. The mystery of their fate was born. From Baffin Bay, the ships pressed into Lancaster Sound, chasing the Northwest Passage. Journals later recovered stopped soon after. The ice, relentless, trapped Erebus and Terror in Victoria Strait near King William Island, a desolate expanse where the wind howled like a dirge and the sun barely rose. The men, confined to creaking hulls, faced a cold that froze breath in the air. Supplies, though ample, began to sour. Tinned meat carried the unseen poison of lead, and scurvy's grip tightened, sapping strength. The Arctic's silence was suffocating, broken only by the ice's groans, a sound like a living pulse slowing to a halt. Something deeper unsettled the crew. Some, like James Fitzjames, wrote of a feeling of being watched. Sailors reported shadows moving on the ice, vanishing when approached. Lights flickered in the snow, sourceless and fleeting. The Inuit, though distant, knew this land as a place of spirits where storms carried voices not meant for human ears. Franklin's men, rooted in Victorian science, dismissed such notions, but fear gnawed at them. The ice seemed alive, its vastness pressing on their minds, whispering doubts no compass could dispel. What happened next is a void. The ships, locked in ice, may have been crushed, forcing the crew into a frozen wasteland. Or perhaps they marched south, dragging sleds in a desperate bid for salvation. No messages reached England, no survivors emerged. The Arctic erased them, leaving no trace beyond the ice's grip. The last sighting in Baffin Bay marked the edge of the known, the moment 129 men stepped into a silence that devoured them. Were they undone by ice, hunger, or something the Arctic wouldn't name? Picture yourself on those ships, the ice closing in, the silence deafening. What would you do? Share your thoughts in the comments. Part 6. Initial Searches. After the HMS Erebus and HMS Terror vanished in 1845, the Arctic's silence became a deafening alarm in England. Sir John Franklin and his 129 men had sailed as heroes, but their absence sparked dread. By 1848, the Royal Navy, urged by Lady Jane Franklin and a restless nation, launched rescue missions into the Canadian Arctic. Ships under men like John Ross and James Clark Ross braved the same ice-choked waters that had swallowed Franklin, facing blizzards and a cold that bit through flesh. What they found were mere fragments, scattered clues that deepened the mystery rather than solving it. In 1850, a breakthrough came on Beechey Island, a barren speck in Lancaster Sound. Rescuers discovered 3 graves marked with the names of Franklin's men: John Torrington, John Hartnell, and William Brain. Their bodies, preserved by permafrost, looked asleep, their faces pale as wax under the Arctic's dim light. Nearby lay traces of a camp, empty tins, frayed ropes, a rusted sextant. But the ships and the other 126 men were gone, as if the ice had erased them. In 1859, Francis McClintock's expedition found a pivotal clue on King William Island, the Victory Point note, written by James Fitzjames and Francis Crozier. It revealed the ships were trapped in ice in September 1846. Franklin died on June 11, 1847, and by April 1848 the survivors, led by Crozier, abandoned the ships, marching south with sleds. The note, scrawled in haste, ended there. These scraps fueled theories. Some believed the ships, crushed by ice, forced a desperate trek. Others pointed to starvation, with scurvy and lead poisoning from tainted tins weakening the men. Yet the absence of most bodies was chilling. Where were the others? The Arctic, with its storms and shifting ice, seemed to hide them deliberately. Rescuers heard whispers from the Inuit, tales of white men seen on the ice, but language barriers muddled the truth. The landscape, with its blinding white and winds that moaned like voices, mocked their efforts as if guarding a secret. The searchers found haunting relics, a watch, a knife, a shred of cloth, signs of a struggle to survive. But no clear answers emerged. The men searching for Franklin felt the Arctic's weight, a place where time froze and the ice seemed alive. Were they chasing ghosts, or had the Arctic claimed the expedition in a way no map could trace? If you were sailing those frozen waters, searching for the lost, would you press on or surrender to the ice's silence? Share your thoughts in the comments. Part 6. Initial Searches. After the HMS Erebus and HMS Terror vanished in 1845, the Arctic's silence became a deafening alarm in England. Sir John Franklin and his 129 men had sailed as heroes, but their absence sparked dread. By 1848, the Royal Navy, urged by Lady Jane Franklin and a restless nation, launched rescue missions into the Canadian Arctic. Ships under men like John Ross and James Clark Ross braved the same ice-choked waters that had swallowed Franklin, facing blizzards and a cold that bit through flesh. What they found were mere fragments, scattered clues that deepened the mystery rather than solving it. In 1850, a breakthrough came on Beechey Island, a barren speck in Lancaster Sound. Rescuers discovered 3 graves marked with the names of Franklin's men: John Torrington, John Hartnell, and William Brain. Their bodies, preserved by permafrost, looked asleep, their faces pale as wax under the Arctic's dim light. Nearby lay traces of a camp, empty tins, frayed ropes, a rusted sextant, but the ships and the other 126 men were gone, as if the ice had erased them. In 1859, Francis McClintock's expedition found a pivotal clue on King William Island, the Victory Point note, written by James Fitzjames and Francis Crozier. It revealed the ships were trapped in ice in September 1846. Franklin died on June 11, 1847, and by April 1848 the survivors, led by Crozier, abandoned the ships, marching south with sleds. The note, scrawled in haste, ended there. These scraps fueled theories. Some believed the ships, crushed by ice, forced a desperate trek. Others pointed to starvation, with scurvy and lead poisoning from tainted tins weakening the men. Yet the absence of most bodies was chilling. Where were the others? The Arctic, with its storms and shifting ice, seemed to hide them deliberately. Rescuers heard whispers from the Inuit, tales of white men seen on the ice, but language barriers muddled the truth. The landscape, with its blinding white and winds that moaned like voices, mocked their efforts as if guarding a secret. The searchers found haunting relics, a watch, a knife, a shred of cloth, signs of a struggle to survive. But no clear answers emerged. The men searching for Franklin felt the Arctic's weight, a place where time froze and the ice seemed alive. Were they chasing ghosts, or had the Arctic claimed the expedition in a way no map could trace? If you were sailing those frozen waters, searching for the lost, would you press on or surrender to the ice's silence? Share your thoughts in the comments. Part 7. Inuit Testimonies. As HMS Erebus and HMS Terror vanished into the Arctic in 1845, the ice held its secrets, but the Inuit, the native people of this frozen world, had stories to tell. While British rescue missions scoured the ice for Sir John Franklin and his 129 men, the Inuit shared tales that blended reality with the uncanny. Recorded by explorers like John Ray and Charles Francis Hall in the 1850s, these oral accounts painted a picture of desperation and mystery, as if the Arctic itself had spoken. Combined with later archaeological finds, these testimonies offer glimpses of the expedition's fate, yet deepen the enigma with whispers of something beyond explanation. The Inuit, masters of surviving the Arctic, saw things the English couldn't fathom. They spoke of white men on King William Island, dragging sleds laden with strange objects. These figures, gaunt and clad in tattered coats, moved like shadows across the snow. Some accounts were darker, bodies mutilated, with marks suggesting cannibalism, a horror unthinkable to Victorian sensibilities. An Inuit elder, interviewed by Ray, described the men as living ghosts, their eyes sunken, their voices faint, as if the Arctic had drained their humanity. Others told of abandoned camps near the Back River, littered with broken tins and scattered bones. These stories, though vital, were fragmented, filtered through cultural and linguistic gaps. The Inuit didn't use maps or fixed dates, their tales floating in a timeless haze. Some spoke of spirits haunting the ice, confusing rescuers. Were these Franklin's men, or something else? One account mentioned a ship trapped in ice, smoke rising from its chimney long after any crew should have survived. Was it a hallucination, or a vessel caught in time? The Arctic's vastness blurred the line between truth and myth. Archaeological finds lent weight to the Inuits' words. On Beechey Island, the 1850 discovery of Torrington, Hartnell and Brain's graves revealed bodies preserved by permafrost, showing signs of scurvy and lead poisoning. On King William Island, skeletons found in the 1980s and 1990s bore cut marks, confirming cannibalism. Objects, watches, knives, scraps of English boots, lined paths the Inuit described, tracing a desperate march south. Yet their stories also held unexplainable details, lights flickering in the snow, figures vanishing when approached. For the Inuit, the Arctic was alive, its glaciers and storms home to spirits that punished intruders. The Inuit painted Franklin's men as outsiders in a realm that rejected them. Their accounts of ghosts walking the ice, seen years after 1848, suggested either survivors clinging to life or something the Arctic wouldn't release. Were these men, broken by hunger and cold, or echoes of a tragedy the ice preserved? The testimonies, vital yet elusive, left more questions than answers, as if the Arctic had woven a veil between the living and the truth. Part 8. Modern Discoveries. The mystery of the Franklin expedition, lost in the Arctic since 1845, began to yield fragments of its grim truth in the 20th and 21st centuries. Modern discoveries, shipwrecks, human remains, and forensic analyses have painted a chilling picture of Sir John Franklin's 129 men aboard HMS Erebus and HMS Terror. These finds confirm the Inuit testimonies of starvation, disease, and desperation, yet each revelation deepens the enigma, as if the Arctic only surrenders pieces of its secret. The evidence tells a story of survival pushed to horrific extremes, but the full tale remains locked in the ice. In 1981, Owen Beatty's team exhumed the Beechey Island graves of John Torrington, John Hartnell, and William Brain, found in 1850. Preserved by permafrost, their bodies looked eerily alive, faces pale as wax, eyes staring through time. Forensic tests revealed toxic lead levels, likely from the expedition's tinned food, poisoning the crew slowly. Scurvy was rampant, swollen gums, brittle bones, weakening even the strongest. On King William Island, skeletons uncovered in the 1980s and 1990s bore cut marks, confirming the Inuit reports of cannibalism that shocked Victorian England when John Ray first shared them in 1854. The ships themselves resurfaced in the 21st century. In 2014, HMS Erebus was found off King William Island, its hull shattered, scattered with artifacts, a bell, cannons, personal items frozen in the seabed. In 2016, HMS Terror was discovered in Terror Bay, remarkably intact, as if the Arctic had preserved it like a trophy. Divers found plates, bottles, even a desk, locked in a moment of abandonment. These wrecks corroborated the 1859 Victory Point note, which detailed the ship's entrapment in ice from 1846 and their abandonment in 1848 by a crew ravaged by disease and hunger. Forensic studies painted a dire scene. Beyond lead and scurvy, hypothermia and pneumonia decimated the men. In 2024, DNA analysis identified James Fitzjames, Erebus's commander, among remains with cut marks, confirming cannibalism as a last resort. The expedition's provisions meant to last 3 years ran dry after 2, and the Arctic's -40-degree storms offered no mercy. Sleds found along Inuit described routes were laden with useless items, silverware, books, boots, hinting at minds clouded by lead poisoning and delirium. The march south, likely toward the back river, became a death sentence. Yet questions linger. Why abandon ships that might still have been habitable? Why drag heavy useless objects across the ice? The Arctic, with its blinding snow and howling winds, seemed to break the men's minds as much as their bodies. Relics like a comb, a watch stopped forever, suggest a futile grasp at civilization in a place that rejected it. Franklin's remains were never found, and the ice keeps silent about his end. The discoveries map a tragedy, but the Arctic holds the final truth, as if it claimed the men not just with cold, but with something deeper, something it won't release. Part 9. Mysteries and Theories. The fate of the Franklin expedition, lost with HMS Erebus and HMS Terror in the Arctic since 1845, remains a puzzle with missing pieces. Modern discoveries, shipwrecks, remains, and forensic evidence of lead poisoning, scurvy, and cannibalism illuminate parts of the tragedy, but the Arctic's silence fuels speculation. While the Victory Point note and archaeological finds point to a grim collapse, unanswered questions invite theories ranging from the plausible to the haunting. Was it only nature's cruelty that consumed Sir John Franklin and his 129 men, or did the ice hide something darker? The mystery thrives in this shadowed space between fact and the unknown. The leading theory, backed by the 1859 Victory Point note and skeletal evidence, suggests a slow unraveling. Trapped in ice since September 1846, the crew suffered from lead poisoning from tainted tins, causing delirium and weakness. Scurvy and starvation followed, and by April 1848, the survivors abandoned the ships for a doomed march south. But why leave potentially habitable ships? Why drag useless items, books, silverware, on sleds? John Ray's 1854 report of cannibalism, confirmed by cut-marked bones, explains desperation, but not why the crew avoided nearby Inuit communities who might have offered aid. Speculative theories push further. Some historians propose lead poisoning came not just from tins, but from the ship's water pipes, amplifying mental collapse. Others suggest clashes with Inuit, though no evidence supports violence. Inuit accounts instead hint at rejected offers of help. Severe climate shifts in the 1840s, documented as a cooling period, may have locked the ships in thicker ice than anticipated. Bolder ideas venture into the fringe, secret admiralty experiments with new technology, or encounters with phenomena the Inuit described, lights flickering in the snow, figures vanishing into storms. These tales, dismissed by science, echo the Arctic's eerie hold. The psychological horror lies in the gaps. Inuit stories of men walking without purpose, seen years after 1848, suggest either survivors or something the ice preserved. Were these hallucinations from hunger and lead, or echoes of a tragedy the Arctic wouldn't release? The absence of Franklin's remains and most of the crew fueled speculation that something beyond nature claimed them. The Arctic, with its blinding white and winds howling like voices, felt like a place where reality bent. Could the men have stumbled into something no map could chart? The mystery endures because it resists closure, a reminder that some truths stay buried. If you stood on that ice, the wind whispering your name, would you trust the rational explanations or the shadows the Inuit swore they saw? Share your theories in the comments. Part 10. Reconstructing the expedition. Piecing together the final days of the Franklin expedition is like assembling a puzzle with half the pieces missing. The HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, trapped in the Arctic since 1845, and Sir John Franklin's 129 men left scattered clues that archaeologists and scientists have used to trace their tragic path. The Victory Point note, skeletal remains, and shipwrecks found in 2014 and 2016 allow a partial reconstruction, but the Arctic's silence hides the end. Drawing from maps, modern simulations, and Inuit accounts, this part weaves a haunting narrative of desperation, grounded in evidence, yet shadowed by the ice's unyielding mystery. The expedition began in Baffin Bay in July 1845, sailing through Lancaster Sound toward the Northwest Passage. Inexact maps led them to Victoria Strait near King William Island, where ice locked the ships in September 1846. The Victory Point note, found in 1859, states that Franklin died on June 11, 1847, likely from illness worsened by scurvy or lead poisoning. The crew endured another year aboard, battling 40-degree below zero cold, tainted provisions, and diseases that gnawed at body and mind. By April 1848, 105 survivors, led by Francis Crozier and James Fitzjames, abandoned the ships, as the note records, setting out south with sleds toward the Back River, 250 miles away, hoping for a trading post or navigable waters. The march was a death sentence. Skeletons on King William Island, analyzed in the 1980s and 2024, show cut marks confirming cannibalism, a desperate act as starvation took hold. Sleds, found by rescuers, were laden with bizarre cargo, books, silverware, a desk, suggesting minds clouded by lead poisoning and delirium. Inuit accounts described gaunt men dragging these loads, some collapsing in the snow, never to rise. Modern climate models show the 1846 to 1848 winters were brutally harsh, with ice thicker than expected, sealing the ship's fate. The Erebus, found shattered in 2014, likely broke under ice pressure. The Terror, discovered intact in 2016 in Terror Bay, suggests an orderly abandonment, yet no bodies were found inside. Simulations map their route from Lancaster Sound to the northwest coast of King William Island, then a doomed trek south. Each step was a battle against a frozen desert, with winds howling like mourners and snow blinding their path. The men, weakened by scurvy, lead, and hypothermia, couldn't survive the journey. Remains of James Fitzjames, identified in 2024, bear cannibalism marks, a grim testament to their final days. Why didn't they seek Inuit help just miles away? Was it pride, madness, or something in the ice that drove them to ruin? The Arctic, with its endless white and relentless storms, seemed to mock their struggle, as if it had chosen their fate. The reconstruction is vivid but incomplete. The ice erased most traces, leaving only relics, a watch, a boot, a frozen moment of despair. Franklin's body was never found, and the Arctic holds the final chapter, as if the men still wander its frozen expanse. Part 11. Historical and Cultural Legacy. The disappearance of the Franklin expedition, with its 129 men and the HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, didn't fade into obscurity, but grew into a haunting myth that echoes through time. Swallowed by the Arctic in 1845, the mystery has fueled literature, music, television, and exploration, transforming Sir John Franklin into a symbol of human ambition pitted against an untamed wilderness. Like the lost colony of Roanoke, the expedition's unanswered questions captivate us, blending tragedy with an eerie allure that speaks to our fear of the unknown. In the 19th century, the expedition gripped England's imagination. Lady Jane Franklin, relentless in her quest for answers, funded rescue missions and became a tragic heroine, inspiring ballads and newspaper tales. Charles Dickens, outraged by John Ray's 1854 reports of cannibalism, championed the crew's honor, shaping a narrative of noble sacrifice. By the 20th century, the story found new life in literature. Dan Simmons's 2007 novel The Terror wove historical facts with supernatural horror, imagining the crew battling not just ice, but something darker. Its 2018 adaptation brought the tale to screens, with stark images of ships locked in ice and men unraveling in despair, amplifying the Arctic's psychological terror. Music, too, has carried the myth. Stan Rogers' 1981 folk song Northwest Passage mourns Franklin while celebrating the explorer's spirit, likening his quest to Canada's pioneers. Documentaries like Franklin's Lost Ships 2015 and The Terror, The Search for the Lost Arctic Expedition dissect the 2014 and 2016 discoveries of Erebus and Terror, showcasing relics, bells, boots, a frozen notebook that draw crowds to museums in Canada and London. These artifacts keep the tragedy tangible, as if the Arctic still holds the men's last moments. The expedition's legacy shaped Arctic exploration. The search for Franklin refined maps and spurred scientific advances, paving the way for Roald Amundson's 1906 navigation of the Northwest Passage. Yet the story endures for its parallels to other mysteries. Roanoke, the Mary Celeste MH370, where entire groups vanish, leaving only whispers. The Arctic, with its blinding snow and howling winds, became a character in these tales, a force that defies human control. Franklin's failure taught explorers to respect the ice, not challenge it. What makes Franklin's story linger is its refusal to resolve. No trace of Franklin himself was found, and Inuit tales of men walking years later hint at a mystery the ice won't release. The expedition is more than a loss. It's a mirror for our obsession with conquering the unconquerable. It asks what drives us to brave places that reject us, and what price do we pay? The Arctic, vast and merciless, holds those answers, as if Franklin's men still wander its frozen heart.